Okay, we are recording and may start.
Okay, should I call the meeting to order then?
Please.
Okay, yes. Meeting is called to order. We're going to start with the public hearing. During the public hearing, anyone wishing to comment in support or in opposition to a public hearing item may do so. Once the hearing is closed, there will be no further public comment unless requested by the zoning hearing officer. To agenda item number 1, B20-03, the Murphys on the Tracks.
Good evening, Hearing Officer Munt. The request before you tonight is B20-03, the Murphy on the Tracks. The subject site is located west of the northwest corner of Guadalupe and Cooper Roads, and it's approximately 0.9 net acres and is zoned community commercial with a planned area development. Just to provide some context to this site and some history on there, this site was originally part of the Fiesta Ranch PAD that was originally enacted in 1984. It had some amendments in the 90s and the 2000s. In 2006, there was actually a design review case that was approved on the subject site when it was zoned LI with the PAD to allow a warehouse and office was planned in tandem with the existing office and warehouse facility located directly west of the site. That site did develop. This one has laid vacant ever since. In January of this year, Town Council approved a major general plan amendment and a rezoning with the PAD, the subject site for the Murphy on the Tracks, which is related to this variance request. The design review for the variance request was previously reviewed at study session by the Planning Commission back in November. I just wanted to provide you with a rendering of the proposed design review to give you some context into the type of development that is planning to go here. The applicant is proposing to do a 7,000 square foot commercial development that will have a combination of retail and restaurant uses along with some salon type uses. So the request tonight is for 2 separate variance requests that are under the same application. The first is to allow a 3-foot screen wall in the front street frontage landscape area, and the second is to increase the number of consecutive parking stalls without a landscape planner from 8 to 12. So just to dive a little deeper into those variance requests to have a little bit more of an understanding. So for the first variance request to allow a 3-foot screen wall in the front street twister, the front street frontage landscape area, I just provided a snippet here of the site plan that is going through the design review process to provide a little bit more of an context for the graphic. In blue, you can see here is the front landscape setback. It is 7 feet, which is modified from CC through their PAD. And then outlined here in purple is the parking screen wall. So as you can see, they're requesting for the parking screen wall to be located in that landscape setback, which is typically not permitted. The applicant has provided some details of the screen wall that will be included with the design review case, just so you can see kind of what they are proposing to go in that area. The second variance request is to increase the number of consecutive parking stalls without a landscape planner from 8 to 12. So the reason the applicant has requested this was in order to fit more parking on the site in order to accommodate our parking code for their specific uses proposed. So through our variance process, we do not allow for a reduction in actual parking numbers. So this was the applicant's request to proceed forward to meet the required parking minimums. So for a variance, there are 4 findings that must be met in order to have the variance approved. The first one here is that there are special circumstances applicable to the property, including its size, shape, topography, location, or surroundings, whereby the strict application of the zoning ordinance will deprive such property of privileges enjoyed by other property of the same classification in the same zoning district. In the report, we outlined some items that impact the site that staff finds makes it meet the findings. Also in the narrative, the applicant provided their findings as well. I just provided an aerial here for you to provide some reference. Some of the biggest items that impact the site and what constitute the variance is the unique shape, the triangular shape that's outlined in blue. The size, it's relatively small for a commercial piece, and previously as a zoned industrial, also an industrial piece at 0.9 net acres. And then also the fact that it's bounded by existing developments. So infill pieces specifically, along with being small and being of a unique shape, can cause some difficulties in achieving the standard items of the code. And moving on to the second finding, such special circumstances were not created by the owner of applicants. The property's size and shape and development around it were existing prior to the applicant. The applicant has gone through the PAD process in order to make this development work and is still having difficulties reaching all elements of the code, not due to items that they have created, but due to the existing circumstances on the site. The third finding is the variance does not constitute a grant of special privileges and consistent with the limitations upon other properties in the vicinity and zone in which such property is located. In this graphic, I just provided you some context into why they would like the screen walls to be located within that front landscape setback. One of the chief items that they pointed out is that they'd like to match the existing development that this property was originally supposed to be developed with to the west. So here, on this side to the left, I'm displaying the existing parking field and parking screen walls for the existing industrial development. And then on the right, you can see I provided a snippet of the site plan for the proposed development. They don't completely line up, but they are very similar and much closer than if the development had to follow the strict application of the setback. So the applicant would like to match what's existing on there to create a cohesive street frontage and to match surrounding developments. And the final finding is the variance will not be detrimental to persons residing or working in the vicinity. So I just put a snippet up here of the site plan again, just for reference. So these types of items that they're requesting are located internal to the site and will not greatly impact other property owners or residents within the vicinity. And also, in addition to this, the applicant is not requesting that specific items be waived. They are looking for them to be modified. For example, they are still providing the required parking screening. They're still providing the amount of parking that is required. It's just through a modified setting. It's the staff's recommendation that you approve the variances as stated below, and I'm here for questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Sydney. I personally don't have a lot of questions because we did just in the recent past see this on the Planning Commission. Outside of, with the one question I would ask is the wall, are we only talking about a variance of the location then of the wall, or is it that it's a variance of the type of wall that would be required?
Hearing Officer Munn, it is specifically for the location of the wall. So they'll still be required to provide a 3-foot screen wall per code. It will just be located within the landscape area opposed to behind the landscape area. So typically behind that landscape setback is where it is required to go. So they're requesting that it can be located inside there opposed to removing it.
Very good. Yeah, I don't have any more questions.
And we do have the applicant here and they do have a presentation prepared.
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't let the applicant speak, so I'd say let's bring up Mr. Baugh.
Good afternoon, Commissioner Mund. Thank you for the time today.
I'm sorry, I think Ava turned it on.
No, I think it's on. Yeah,
Oh, it's on.
yeah, it's on. Thank you. On behalf of the applicant, my name is Adam Baugh. I also have my junior associate with me today, and she's going to help present part of our case. So I'll turn it over to her.
Hello, my name is Chloe Baugh, here on behalf of the Murphy on the Tracks project. I'm excited to share a little background about this case and the rail line. This site is located west of Cooper Road along the railroad tracks. Frank Murphy's success building railroads convinced him that he could build one along the Gila River to Phoenix to bring gold and copper from distant mining towns. Murphy designed his railroad from Phoenix to Mesa, then southeasterly to Florence, and from Florence easterly along the Gila River to Kelvin. In 1902, he began buying rights of way from landowners along his route. One of the parcels was owned by William Michael Bobby Gilbert, the namesake of our great town. The rest is history, as they say. Murphy on the Tracks is a new development that plays homage to our rail line history and makes use of an otherwise challenged site. Let me tell you a little bit about this site. It's rather small, not even a full acre. The site has no direct access to Guadalupe Road and instead has to drive across the adjacent property. The site is also shaped like a triangle, which is great for my geometry class, but terrible for site development. The site also is impacted by the rail line to the north, as well as a large right-of-way along its frontage, which unfortunately squeezes the site. For these reasons, any development of this site will have to overcome some big challenges to be successful. Now I will turn it back to my mentor to share the rest.
I need to share it.
Thank you for that very eloquent speech there, Ms. Ball.
Commissioner Munn, thank you for your time, and I think you've got hopefully we'll be seeing much of her in the future. Thank you for your time. I'll just kind of cut this really quick. Staff's done a great job and this helped us get to this project. This might be your third or fourth time seeing this now, so I don't need to spend a lot of time on it. But two things I want to highlight here. At the end of the day, you have options, and the options are: do you do a PAD to reduce parking, or do you do variance to reduce parking? Town of Gilbert's very unique. They're the only jurisdiction I'm aware of that doesn't allow either one of those options to solve a parking problem. And so we had to get creative here. We haven't overbuilt the site. 7,000 square feet is not a lot of building. In fact, most time you try to put more on here to make this economically feasible. But what they've done here is commensurate the size of the building, parking to match it. And so in order to make that happen, we had to either do two things: reduce square footage or reduce landscaping. And so what we've been able to do, given that we already have a very small building footprint, is find a way to remove a little bit of landscaping on the internal parts of the parking lot, not the external parts. And so doing, from going from 8 spaces to 12 without having an intervening parking lot landscape island, we're able to squeeze in that extra 1 or 2 spaces. And I want to point out here, if you look at our loop that cuts around the project, normally we would just have an internal loop and come in and out of that same access point to the south. But because of the existing easement that predated our involvement, we had to have 2 access points, one from the bottom and one from the north. And so had we not had that easement on the north side, we probably could have fit in a few more spaces up there to make this work. But you deal with the circumstances you've got. And so that's what we're doing here today. The second part of this variance is the screen wall. Frankly, this is just to serve 2 purposes: to screen out a little bit of the cars and the parking lots as they park perpendicular to the street, but 2, to sort of match the screen wall on the opposite side of the driveway. Here's an image that shows you what that screen wall looks like presently and what we're hoping to mimic on the east side. The east side will have a rock wall feature, but still a wall of similar location and height. So just to cut right to it, this is the 4 elements of the variance test. I think staff's done a very good job laying out. I think my junior associate's done a better job than what I can today. But I'll tell you that it's unusual to have a triangle property with no street access at all. It actually has to drive through the adjacent property to get to the road. And that's because there's a non-vehicular access easement along its frontage. It's unusual to be next to a rail line. It's unusual to have this remnant piece that's been around for 2006 with entitlements and still not developed. So all these factors combine together to create special circumstances. Now, we can create these things. These are just the factors of having the property next to the rail line where it cuts it right through it. And I think with the city's acquisition of some of that right of way to provide a decel lane and then putting that easement that restricts any access directly onto Guadalupe Road was another thing that we didn't create, but trying to work with and solve. I think to my client's credit, most people just pass on this property. I think that's probably why it's been vacant for so long. But what he's tried to do is go, I'm embracing these challenges and I'm going to make something creative, even if I need a little bit of flexibility in the code. And I think staff did a great job pointing out that what we're proposing to develop really is consistent with the surrounding stuff that's around us with regard to how it's developed under the prior code. And so these standards that we're dealing with today make it a little bit more challenging. So we're not asking for a right that makes us a special privilege than something else. And lastly, this will not have a negative impact whatsoever on the surrounding area. And I think more importantly, it makes it more compatible and as a greater benefit to the surrounding area through the achievement of these variances. So at the end of the day, when I think about variances, sometimes you got to stretch one to get it approved, and others are just textbook. This is one of those textbook variances where it checks all the boxes to that test. And the fact that you can actually create something meaningful out of an otherwise challenged site is a great thing for the town. And I know you've seen this 3 or 4 times, but this is probably one of my most favorite projects. It's going to be something unlike you've ever seen before. And when most people would turn their backs to the rail line, we found a way to embrace it. And to make that possible, we just need a little bit of flexibility. So at the end of the day, this does allow reasonable use of the property. For that, I'm grateful. So thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. And you were right. Your associate is slightly more eloquent than you, but you're still pretty good. Okay. From this vantage point, do I comment? This is more of a question for Miss Nancy, who I'm missing dearly.
Yes, hi, Commissioner Munt. If you have questions, you can always have questions. If you want to provide comment, you can, or you can reserve it for your decision. It's up to you.
Okay. Well, given this is my first one and I'm being somewhat unorthodox, I don't want to get too out of line, but I really like this project. And I also don't feel as though there's any detriment, nor is this providing any special circumstances, all of which both Mr. Baugh and Sydney had covered quite well. So I'm leaning very strongly in favor of this, and we'll put together that. But I think that between a railroad track and an industrial setting, to be able to put something like this is quite an innovative thought process. And I also commend the developer on the continuity and the integrity to stick with it and find a way, because I do think this will look quite nice at that corner, because that corner isn't that exciting as it stands. So I believe, and Nancy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that I will have a letter out, and barring any crazy unforeseen recounts, it will be passed.
Correct, yeah, and there's up to 10 days to write the decision. So so that should be upcoming, and I think Mr. Boss familiar, right? So yeah.
Okay. Very good. Thank you all. I appreciate it. Can I now say I close?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, I thought that had been, I have to continue. Yes. Okay.
We
Last
can, I'm sorry, Commissioner Monk, we cannot hear I don't know if you can hear us, but we cannot hear in WebEx. So if you said something, if you could just repeat it, that'd be great.
I'm sorry, this is Ava Kutro, the planning manager. The next case is V20-023XB, and there is a request to continue this case to the January 13th, 2021 meeting.
Okay. And continue it we shall. With that, I believe that we have come to a point in the evening for adjournment. So,
Commissioner, sorry, this is Nancy. If you could just move to continue the item to that specific date, that would be great, just so we can have it in the record. Thank you.
yes, ma'am. I'd like to take this time to move to extend the date for V20-023XB LLC to the January 13th hearing meeting.
Perfect. Thank you.
Should I now vote on that alone, Nancy?
I know you look so lonely up there. Nope, you're good.
Okay, thank you. All right, and then with that, we'll pronounce adjournment.